A fox knows many things, but a hedgehog knows one important thing.
Welcome to the Morning Hedgehog podcast, where we explore the business ideas that shape your success. Here are your hosts Ira Gardner and Glynns Thomas. We now join Glynns and Ira in progress.
Great marketing is when you don't even recognize you're being marketed to. Instead, maybe you just discovered a great new product. It's going to make your life easier or more fun. Or one example I like to give people is maybe you're looking for a new hairstylist. You just haven't found anyone who really understands what it is you want to do. And then you meet up, you've run into a friend of yours. Right now you can't because of COVID, but one day we'll be back out there.
We'll be back.
Yeah. And your friend has got this great haircut, and you love it. And you ask her where you had it done. And then she tells you where she had it done. And now you're super excited to call that hairstylist the next day. Yes, you were just marketed to, but you don't see that as marketing, right? You just saw it as somebody just solved a great problem and you're super excited about it. On the other hand, but what I think some of the fear is we don't recognize when we're being marketed to because we see it as something that's helpful. But we remember when we're being marketed to and we didn't want that message. We weren't interested in it. And that's the negativity that we're worried about. So what we want to do, what you brought up earlier, is it's really important to try to find your target segments and make sure you do it at the right time. It's not an easy thing to do, but you get better and better with that with practice and experience. But delivering the message to the right people and at the right time is a core marketing strategy. Here's an example. I find this a very weird example, but it's true. So I used to manage the online banner advertising that you would see when you logged into your online banking account. And this is when Wells Fargo was first doing it. It was brand new. And I did it specifically to small businesses. I didn't do it to the consumers. And when people would ask me what I do and I'd tell family and friends, they would start complaining. I hate seeing those ads. And one person actually told me how offended they were with seeing those ads. So some people feel very strongly about online advertising. But obviously we were in the beginning of this and they weren't so well targeted. I also didn't quite understand it because nowadays I see the pop-ups that you can't move into it until you get through the pop-up, and I do find those a little annoying. But these were just little banner ads on the side. Anyways, to each their own. But I would get reports from our web developers that would show me how many people clicked on those banner ads and how many people then filled out an online application to apply for that product. And, maybe that was for a business line of credit or a business credit card, something along that lines. And it was undeniable that people responded to these and the company was making money because of these. Now, you could go onto the website and find all those products and services, but from a marketing standpoint, we know that there is the issue of an inertia. People are less likely to proactively look into something. So your success in marketing is partly based on how easy you make it for people and how you bring the message directly to them. And that is a whole nother conversation that we can have. So in addition to me seeing that people were clicking and buying, we would actually receive letters from people sometimes thanking us for letting them know about something. So there was one woman who sent a letter, said that she was looking for a payroll service and she'd been searching online for different companies. And at this point she was at analysis paralysis and no company was meeting all the needs that she had. But she logged into her online banking session. She saw a little banner ad that talked about payroll services, and she had no idea that Wells Fargo offered payroll services. So she clicked on the banner, looked at the landing page, and saw that it met the needs that she did at the price point that she was looking for, and she bought it. And she felt compelled enough to write a letter to say, thank you for that banner ad. So you're not going to make everybody happy, but the people that need it, you're going to make really happy.
Well,
So
think about it. Nobody particularly likes a car advertisement until they're in the market of buying a car.
that's right.
And so you are going to resonate more with people who need what you're providing. And I think the tools for segmenting and targeting your marketing have gotten so much better to be able to reach the right people.
Yes, and there's so much more available to us as small business owners that wasn't available to us 10 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
There is a lot out there at a pretty decent price, and even some things for free. So it is possible. I also wanted to go more into what we were talking earlier about understanding who you are and really having a solid message that you're comfortable with. So that's another part about getting over that hurdle of feeling really nervous about putting yourself out there. So there's a book called Sell or Be Sold by Grant Cardone, and I recommend that book.
Great. We'll put that in the show notes.
That's a great book. And let me just go on a little tangent. So that book is specifically written for people who are professional salespeople. We're business owners. So I just say, I've heard people give criticisms of the book because of that. And I just want to say there's still a lot of great information in there. You just have to take what is useful for you. And understanding what professional salespeople do can really benefit you. So, but in that book, what I wanted to share was, he says, in order to become a great salesperson, you have to sell yourself on what you are selling. You have to be utterly convinced and believe in what you are selling. If you won't buy it yourself, you've not sold yourself. If you can't pass the simple test of being willing to buy your own product, you'll never be able to sell it to others. And I think that when you're still new to business, you're still discovering who you are and who your business is for and why it will be helpful to them. But it's really important at this point is that you go through the self-discovery to figure that out. And it's also okay that you may not be your target audience. My target audience for headshots are marketing managers at an office. I don't work for an office. I'm not a marketing manager, but I do know fully that if I was, I would go out of my way to find somebody like me because I would want what I do, which is different from what other headshot photographers do. I completely believe that. And therefore, I can sell it like that to other people.
I just want to throw in there something you're doing is you don't have to be exactly like your target market. You have to have shared values and shared goals and objectives and relate to each other on a similar emotional level, and that's the tone and the pitch and how you communicate with your target market. But you don't have to do the same job to understand what they need. You need to understand the emotional connection and the problem that they're trying to solve, and you need to provide the solution to their problem.
Right. There's that saying that people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're, again, going back to being helpful, it starts with understanding who you are. It starts with understanding who your customers are and what will be helpful to them, and understanding why it will be helpful to them. Then you can come from a place of caring. And it's not about pushing yourself onto others. It's about informing the right people about what they need. And really, when you put that all together and you get that, they're going to be so happy to have met you and to have found you.
Yeah, and I just want to throw in there too, as you're thinking about your marketing messages, You know, it's not even really the product. There's a lot of headshot photographers out there, but when you're creating your message, it's about how you do your headshots, and it's about why you do your headshots and what benefit it has. And it can be about your process. It can be about your customer satisfaction. There's a lot of ways we can work within the same product line as other photographers, but there's a way to differentiate. I mean, I always look at blue jeans. There are blue jeans or blue jeans or blue jeans, but branding and the messaging and the nonverbal communication that goes into each of those products is what differentiates that product for the market segment that really is drawn to it.
Absolutely. That's a great example. There are tons of different blue jean brands out there. We as a society have moved further away from everybody's the same and more into who we are as an individual. I mean, that's a very American thing, but we have become more and more and more like that. As more choice comes out there, we're not stuck with the one or two choices. We love being able to find something that's unique and specific to us, because we believe that we have differences. We are unique in some ways, and the more we can find different products and services that are who we are, the happier. Well, that's the premise. I don't know if it's true, but happier we are. We certainly want it. You know, as another example, so in the headshot business, there are other photographers who are about high volume, and that's not what I do. And there is nothing wrong. When I put my messages together, it's not that I'm saying they're all wrong and they're all bad and you don't want them. I'm just saying, here's how I'm different for those particular people who want that. A photographer who, somebody, if my target audience is looking for somebody who's going to do ID badges, what they're looking for is somebody who's going to do it at a fairly inexpensive price, because there's not going to be that much value in a tiny little picture that's going to be put on there. The need for that is pretty low, and they have a ton of people they may need to get that. So speed is going to be really important in a low price. And a photographer that can successfully do that as part of their business model, absolutely. I have no issues with somebody picking somebody else for that type of job over me, because that's just not what my brand's about and what I want to deliver.
Yeah, and I think we'll talk about, you know, the brand archetypes and the emotional drivers behind that. Businesses take on the personalities of their owners, and so if you're in a high touch, custom quality boutique business, then taking more time is going to be an important message to communicate. If you're in more of a low touch, more automated, more, you know, if you're more of an engineer, techie, you're maybe going to be more looking for the most economy amount of time for the photos to be made. You know, engineers, you know, what makes an engineer is different than you and I is that we could always, all of us could build a bridge. It just might be this huge monstrosity thing because we're going to make sure it's strong enough. The engineer is going to figure out with math and science the least amount of resources to get the job done. It's just a completely different mindset, and it's beautiful. We get beautiful cable bridges like the Golden Gate Bridge, for example, is very different than, say, the Brooklyn Bridge, which was built out of stone and is bigger, bulkier, etc. So you have to understand that you can't appease or meet every person's needs. You can only meet the people's needs that you have shared value, that you put all your decision making through that lens. And so you're talking about addressing a target market that looks at things that where time is a relationship, time is an important factor to that relationship. And so that's an appropriate message to your target market.
Yeah. And to those who are watching, I recognize that we are spending a lot of time talking about this, but there are a lot of people out there who are being completely held back on this. So, and I don't see a lot of people really going into a deep dive about this. So I just really want to make sure that this message is getting through and that you feel hopeful and motivated that you're going to be able to start putting yourself out there and feel really great.
I'm just going to throw in one other example. I was working with a photographer about 6 months ago, and they're predominantly in the wedding market. And what's really interesting is that there's a niche within any genre of photography there's an audience for it. In fact, Amazon makes a tremendous amount of money off of what they call the long tail. The less than 1% adds up to be a lot of business. And I was working with this photographer that actually did not fit the mold of your typical wedding photographer. They were really much more into an economy approach to wedding photography. And that doesn't mean it has to be a total economy of low end wedding photography. What it was they identified, they had a social justice view of the world that said every bride deserves beautiful wedding photos. And so their mission and their target audience were people that were in that a little bit more value driven, economy driven. But that was a niche that she was going after very, very effectively and has done really well with it. And so just because, Glynns, you're more of a high touch and I'm a more of a somewhere in between innovator. But there are also those that are just get it done, most economical, the engineering type. And there's a niche for that too. And so when we talk about this, we're not putting any preference on any one approach. What we're saying is figure out who you are and know that there's a market out there for you. And all you have to do is look at the explosion of television channels on cable television, the way that different stations are targeting very specific audience segments. And we have to refine and sharpen our focus to our target segment so that we're really not competing with other photographers. I really believe that if we do our job right, because there is no competition if I'm really segmenting my market.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's great. Speaking to your example about all the different channels out there, there is a lot of noise in terms of programming out there. It's an overwhelming amount of choice. And how much time do we spend flipping through trying to find the next show that we want to watch? And that sort of segments into what I wanted to talk about next was repetition. But first, I think the repetition is going to help you become more comfortable saying it, and the repetition is going to help you get heard as well. So I encourage people that once you figure out what your sales message is, your solid message, you're going to need to repeat it over and over and over again. Practice it in the car, practice it in front of a mirror, practice it with friends and family, and then practice it at every networking opportunity that you have. The more times you say it, the more comfortable you're going to feel, and the more it just becomes less about bearing your heart and soul and more about you helping others. The focus comes off of you. And it's also a great way for you to keep fine-tuning that message because it is an evolution so that you can be your most authentic. And then like in terms of making sure that it's out there and there's a consistency, repeat it in your marketing messages. It should be on your website. It should be on your business card, on your About Me sections, on all your social media platforms, email newsletters, any direct mail pieces. The consistency and the repetition is how you're then going to be known for whatever that specific brand that you are. And again, remember, people aren't paying attention to every time You've said it. They've only heard it a small fraction. So you may feel like you're a broken record. You may feel like you're annoying the heck out of everybody, but the vast majority aren't hearing it every single time. Your job is to make sure they hear it a few times.
They need to hear it at least 7 times before it'll actually move from short-term dismissive into longer term. And they have to hear it at least 7 times before they make a decision.
Yeah, that's called the Rule of 7 by Dr. Jeffrey Lant, that a buyer needs to hear your message 7 or more times within an 18-month period before they start to consider you. That's just to get them to the consider phase. That isn't necessarily all the way to the purchase phase. So people need to hear about it. There are so many businesses out there that have been out there for a while. And so when they put their message out, they are further along in, this goes into a whole nother webinar that I want to talk about, which is the purchase decision cycle. And that's about brand awareness. So the more times people are aware of you, you've moved them further along in the process to get them to actually buy. And then therefore you can get them to there faster.
All right, I want to back up. I want to back up.
Yeah.
I have a question on behalf of our audience. So we've been talking about how important it is to develop your message and to practice it and fine tune it. How do you go about doing how do you develop your elevator pitch?
I think that should be a whole nother webinar about how you do that. I think we should, but I think it starts with going through the work of understanding who you are, what it is that we talked about, people, our customers who have loved us, how did we help them, and putting that into that message. I think it goes from who are you, how have you helped people, and then understanding that your message is about how you help people. I mean, we can talk about features and benefits, and I think that deserves another webinar, but to make the answer succinct in this one, I think the answer just lies in how you're going to help others.
Well, so I'm going to jump in here a little bit, because really what we're getting towards is the power of storytelling. And you're telling your story. And the hero of your story is not you, it's your customer. And I will post the talk, but there's 3 simple questions. And all you have to do is answer these 3 questions. And that is, number 1, what do you do? Number 2, who do you do it for? And number 3, what is the benefit? And then when you want to build your elevator pitch, you reverse the order. Talk about the benefit and what you do and who you do it for. You flip the order of I transform the lives, right? The benefit of families, who I do it for, by creating portraits creating wall portraits that remind the children in the household that they're loved.
Yes, that's a great succinct way to put that. We're going to talk more about that.
Yeah,
we have to.
Definitely. Yeah. Okay, sorry. I just wanted to get that in there, because I found myself just listening to us. I'm like, yeah, but we all know we need to do this, but give me some tips. Like, I don't know how to do this. This is hard, and it is hard.
Yes. And so you've got that message now, and I'm talking about repeat it. And I think that is also another stumbling block for a lot of small business owners, is that they finally get the nerve up to start promoting themselves and then nothing happens. That's because they don't understand how important frequency is. You just have to keep saying it over and over again. So make sure you don't fall into that trap and then give up. So we've got to keep going. So I'm going to throw
in. Yeah. I was at my bank a few months ago, and I have been friends with the branch manager. We've known each other since she was a bank teller. Now she's a branch manager. And she was all excited. She knows I'm a photographer, and she was all excited to show me this email of another photographer in town that sends out a weekly email newsletter and just showing what he does. And she thought I'd be interested. And of course I was. And I know this photographer, and I know him well. He's a friend of mine. The fact that he just sends it out every week on the same day, that people just love that. And for her to tell me, who may be technically considered a competitor, although I don't think so, I don't think that way, just shows the power of just the repetition.
Absolutely. Repetition means people, you're top of mind. People are going to remember you. And it also means that when the timing is right, they'll remember to think of you, as opposed to maybe somebody else who has been staying top of mind. That repetition is building basically a stronger relationship. You're just creating, the people that you spend in your personal life the most time with, you have the deepest connections with. And I'm not saying that we as photographers need to be one of the 5 people of all of our customers, but it's that concept of moving closer to, it's not just I did the job and then I hopefully you'll call me next year. It's just continuing a relationship. And then for the people that you haven't done business with, it's starting a relationship with. I mean, I guess in a way it's kind of like when you go into town, who's that person, certain people you kind of tend to see over and over again. You can be in a town with thousands and thousands of people, but on, your particular habits and the path that you go through, you're going to see certain people on a continual basis. And that's what we want to do as a business owner, is make sure that we are one of those people that our customers and our prospects are seeing on a continual basis. I also want to talk about is that when you're doing this repetition, when you have a message that you feel is authentic and true, and one that you feel is helping others, over time, you should see a shift in moving away from feeling like you're bearing your heart and soul to your business is your business. It is a part of you, but it isn't all of you. And not all of your self-worth is tied into it, which is what I think some people who are hesitant to promote themselves are feeling. And even though I understand this all logically, and I've been trained in this, I almost knocked over my microphone. I experienced this myself in my own business. In the very beginning, it was hard for me to want to put myself out there and I hope they like me. I hope they like my work. I mean, that was difficult. But over time, I've seen this shift in that, in a way, I sort of liken it to the business is kind of like one of my children. I myself want to come off as a humble and not boastful person. But if somebody has, let's say, a problem and a need, I'm excited to jump in and tell them about that. So here's an example. I have a son who's totally into computers, loves it, researches it, talks nonstop about computer components. Much to my chagrin, but he has since built 2 computers, and he has since then helped other people figure out what is it that they need in a computer and what are the right combination of components they need to fulfill that. So if somebody's having problems with computers and they're thinking about building one, I am super excited to jump in and say, hey, I think my son can help you. Right? Mm-hmm. So, it's not myself of like, oh my gosh, I hope that you like the fact that I can do computers and I hope that you like how I do this. I don't know if I'm explaining this the way that I want to explain it, but I am very excited to be able to provide that information and that help that they're looking for. And I have no qualms doing it because I see my business. I understand what my business is. I understand what it does for certain people. And I believe and I'm sold on it for certain people. And I'm very happy to offer up that help. I hope
I just think about the work person that started the wall portrait conference, Ken Whitmire. I mean, Ken Whitmire just had a passion because he knew the value of what he was doing, and he worked in a rather remote community in Yakima, Washington, small market, and yet he had a world-class career because of his passion of wanting to help people invest in what he did, which was wall portraits.
Yeah. So again, that repetition has many benefits to it for you, whether it's just feeling more comfortable with it, making it even stronger and better. And I think it will help move a shift in perspective for you that you're going to feel a lot more comfortable with.
Thank you for listening to the Morning Hedgehog podcast. For show notes or to submit a question or comment, please visit www.themorninghedgehog.com.